take a look at circles and spiral shapes and how these can be used in your pattern work to create extra sculpture or even flounce in your garments. You can use these shapes to make bias trims, ruffles, collars, and cuffs. But before I go any further, I want to introduce you to a very important and helpful tool that I use. This is Martin Schoben's Patternmaster, and it's extremely helpful in all tailoring and dressmaking. It comes in inches or centimeters. I use the inches tool, marked off in 1/4 of an inch here. You've got your center point, so 1 to 8 inches going that way and then the opposite way. You've got a complete set of curves and grades, so you can add 1/4 or 1/2 an inch to an inward curve or an outward curve. And you can also measure along a curve. So this is very, very helpful. And in this next exercise, we're going to use this 2.5 inches to create an inward spiral from a circle that we scribe onto a piece of cloth. So now I'm going to show you how to scribe a circle into a spare piece of cloth by using a measuring tape and a marking pen. And then we're going to move on to create a spiral inside the circle. And then we're going to show how that can be used to effect with your garments. And then finally, we're going to apply this circle and make a much bigger garment, our dancer's dress. So here I have just a random piece of cloth, and we're going to inscribe a circle in it. And the easiest way to do that is just to fold it into quarters first, and make sure that you press the creases with your hands so that all the edges are even. So here I've got it into quarters. And now I'm going to fold it again into eighths. I'm going to bring this around so it's easier to see. So the point needs to be crisp and all the edges need to be pressed down. So we're going to just mark equidistant points from the point out, creating a set of radiuses. And I'm going to use not your tool of choice, but you'll be able to see this better. So here I'm going to choose about 9 inches, and I'm just going to mark from the point out, make sure that the tape is straight, and then just make a set of marks equidistant so that you have enough, and then you can connect them by eye, rock of eye. That's the rule. So here we go. I'm just going to neaten that up a little bit. And now you've got a lot of layers, so you might want to cut half of them and then do the other half. So edges are all even, and here we go. I'm going to start with 4 layers. So just cut along those lines that you made, and then flip that over and then cut the rest. Now once you're finished with this, you can open it up and you'll have yourself a near perfect circle, which is all you really need. Now, you can see we've got our center point. We're going to be working toward that with a spiral. So we're going to start on the edge, and we're going to work right into that center point by using this Patternmaster tool. And again, I'm going to use a dark marker. Okay, so you start at any point on the circle, and we're going to use the 2.5 inch distance here, which is an easy point to reference on this Patternmaster tool because it's all set there. So measure 2.5 inches all around your circle on the outer edge, and then we're going to come to a point on the outer edge. See, we have to come to the outer edge there. So now we're going to move inward toward the center of the circle. We're going to be following those marks we originally made with our 2.5 inch mark, and you can see now what we're all about here. We're gonna have an inward spiral, and that's going to end at the center point. Okay, so just keep going, and now we're going to join this latest set of marks using 2.5 from that point, and you can see now we're getting very near the center. So when you open this all up, cut all these lines through and you open it all up, You'll see what happens. Now here's one that I prepared earlier, and I've put the lines in quite light, but I'll be able to see them to cut. And it's all set up now to make a proper spiral ruffle. So this is a very thin cotton knit. So when you start cutting cotton knit, you kind of have to grab the cloth, almost cut backwards with the blade of your shears, so that you create a well in the cloth, and then they start cutting easier. So we'll just keep going around, moving the circle, and cut sections. Now, the other thing to mention is that you can imagine that these are very lazy curves. This is not a very sharp curve. This is a shallow curve. But the closer we get to the center, the curves are going to become sharper, more condensed. And when we get to the center, then I'm going to unravel it, and I'm going to show you how you can use different curves and sets of curves to create a different effect on your garment. If you want a very, very concentrated ruffle, then you use a sharper curve. If you want just a bit of a flutter, then you can use one of these outer curve shapes. And you can cut these up and join them and make very long ruffles. It just depends upon what you're outlining. It could be a cuff of a shirt. It could be something down the center front of a shirt. It could be you're trimming a spiral all the way around a skirt or down a trouser leg. So you just design the kind of curve you want and then make it up using all or part of these spirals. Now you see the last piece we have left over is a circle. That's quite right. And here we go. The closer we are to the inside of the circle, look at this. Look at how condensed that is. And you've got loads of trumpets. But if we go down halfway, you can see the ruffles are less, and it's a bit more shallow. Okay, so that's a more subtle set of curves. And then this is the very outside of the circle where we started, and even more subtle treatment. So, when you're designing your garment, you have a choice. This is a really easy method to end up with exactly the volume you want. Here's another one where you get like a waterfall. These trumpets fall in line. You see there? So you can see how versatile this is. Yeah, so just play around. Cut a nice big circle of ruffles. This is what I thought you could do. This is actually going around a shape, around a skirt, around a top. So you get the idea. Here's another example of what you might do with circles. Here I have 2 circles. I've cut 2 layers. I've sewed them together in the outer seam, and I've understitched them so that I know exactly which is the right side and which is the wrong side. Now you can use a contrast fabric here if you want, or a lace and an underlay. And this shows how you can use a circle with a bit more posture. So here we have a cuff, and it's quite sturdy. Or you can pick a very lightweight cloth. Here's the tulle, and I've sewed this in tiers. So this is a circle, and I've just cut it from the outside into the center. And you can see here, this might be a sleeve, or this might be a different kind of a ruffle. Now here's the preparation I used to make my dancer's dress. It's a 4-quadrant circle. In the inside of the circle, you cut the radius, which is equal to your waistline. From there to the outer edge, this is your length, and around is your hemline. We're going to make a pattern for one of these 4 quadrants, and here I'm using, in miniature, this piece of tracing paper. So you can see we have one of 4. We have the straight of grain on the outer edge, and inside we have the true bias. Now this is the part of the garment that's going to stretch, and this is what you'd have to neaten up before you hem. So here we've traced the quadrant, and we've added on in these dotted lines a seam allowance for your French seams to set into the bodice and a hem. And then all you have to do now is to cut each quadrant, 4 the same, and layer them on. You see I'm lapping here because we have a seam allowance for our French seam. And now you get the idea of how the procedure works for making your pattern and cutting the sections and assembling your circular skirt. And now we're going to look at our prototype of our dancer's dress. It's been sewn together. I let it hang for quite a while so that the bias sections of each of those 4 quadrants stretched out, and then I evened out the hem, and then I put in a simple pin hem. So now it's ready to look at. Here we have the prototype of our dancer's dress, and it's made of 2 components. The first is a skirt, and that's built on the full circle. And the second is the bodice, which is made of 2 just plain rectangular shapes. Our skirt has 4 panels. The first one is set on center, then we have 2 side panels, and we have a back panel. And the bodice is pleated into the waistline to sort out our bust darts. And then again it's gathered into the shoulder, and that's put into a tie back. The construction of our skirt is French seam. So here we have a seam within a seam. And then the hem is a simple pin hem. Now this is made with a guide stitch that you then press over and then turn to the outside and top stitch as close as you can to the edge of about 1/16 of an inch. And then working back on the inside of the garment, trim away the excess fabric as close to those lines of stitching as you can. So our 4-panel skirt into the pleated bodice, and then I'll just quickly show you the back. You can see how this triangular section goes in to the side back seam of our skirt. And this is going to be a zip or a set of hook and bars or something, but this is going to be how you get into the dress. And then there's our bodice section pleated into this simple back bow tie. So here is our prototype, our first run at our dancer's dress. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and now you can see how to use the circle and spiral shapes in any of your garments to add a bit of extra sculpture or even some flounce.